When I was 15, I really wanted to travel. I can't remember having a plan or a budget, but all I knew that at some point I wanted to go somewhere and see what it's all about. Mostly I just wanted to experience that feeling of freedom I imagined traveling would give me. And then I turned 20 and I was looking at houses. Not because something happened, nobody talked me out of traveling. There was not really a moment that I decided to give up. I just had forgotten about it. Somewhere between 15 and 20, the thing I wanted stopped occurring to me, just because I had other things to do. But the strange thing is, somewhere along the way, I had started believing that maybe those dreams weren't realistic, or that there were better, more responsible ways to live. So the thing I wanted instead, the house, the mortgage, the whole thing, I didn't choose that consciously. I felt like I grew into it without questioning it, because it's just what you do next. And for me it was traveling. But I think we all have things we once imagined for ourselves that somehow disappear along the way. Like a dream job, a city that you wanted to live in, or business that you wanted to start, or maybe create something like music, art, or live a completely different life. And it's not that you decided that you don't want it anymore, you just stop thinking about it. So this video is about how, when you're not aware of the influence people around you have, you can slowly start living a life shaped by them. Not because they tell you what to do, but just because their choices start to feel like your own. I want to be precise about this, because I think this is the part that gets misunderstood. We talk about environment like it's a set of obstacles. Like there are people in your life holding you back or telling you not to do things. But that's not what happened with me. Nobody in my life ever said don't travel. What happened is more like this. Every conversation I had, every year, every week, every weekend, was with people that were doing roughly the same thing. Finishing studies, getting a job, getting another job, looking for apartments, talking about mortgages. And none of this is bad, I want to be clear about that. Those are real lives and they're pretty good ones. But the thing is, when everyone around you is walking into the same direction, that direction stops looking like a direction. It just looks like forward. I've come to think that there's a difference between those two things. There's a version where you want something and you don't do it because you're scared. That one is uncomfortable, but at least you know that it's happening. The want is still there, you can feel it. And there's the version where the want just went quiet, where it doesn't get rejected, it gets crowded out. It's the one that where you don't wake up at 24 thinking, I gave up on traveling. You just wake up thinking about the mortgage. And traveling doesn't really cross your mind at all anymore. So the first one is fear. The second one is environment. And the second one is way much harder to catch. Because actually there's nothing really to catch. I remember at some point friends were starting to look at houses. Houses, that's not exactly doable in the Netherlands right now. So mostly we're looking at apartments or somewhere else they could have a place for their own. I also started looking around at some point to find a place for my own, but I gave up pretty fast. First, I couldn't find something, and after I was hoping to move in with my boyfriend. But now I still don't have a place in the Netherlands. I moved to different places in different countries every year. And back then it wasn't even an option that came into my mind. And I think that's what makes influence so hard to see. You don't notice the options you're not considering. I certainly didn't. At least not until I left my environment. Eventually, and luckily, I did go. And I want to skip past the traveling itself because that's not what this video is about. What matters is what happened when I came back. I was 11 months away. And when I came back, I was so overstimulated that I needed at least a week just to settle. Everything here back in the Netherlands felt so loud and so fast. But looking back, it wasn't the noise. It was the feeling of being pulled. There was two versions of me standing in the same room. The one I had been slowly discovering during my travels. And the other one was the one that I already knew. It was kind of the old version of me. And the people around me weren't doing anything wrong or different. They weren't trying to pull me back. They were being exactly who they always have been. Familiar, consistent, warm. But the familiarity was a mirror pointed at the old version of me. Every time I looked into it, I felt like I had to decide, am I still that person? Or am I something else now? I remember that was a hard thing to navigate, especially because I was still finding out myself. And here's what I noticed. The pull didn't come from what people said. It came from what was easy. It was easier to be the old version of me because she had a script. And even without realizing it, I started falling back into old patterns and behaviors because it felt like the old version of me was understood. The new one had to be explained. And I want to name something that took me a long time to see. When you change, it isn't neutral for the people who know you. Not because you're selfish, because you change, ask them to ask a question about their life they didn't ask for. If you leave and it works out, it shows them that staying was a choice too. And sometimes it's easier not to think about that. Nobody thinks this consciously. Nobody sits you down and decides to keep you where you are. But it's underneath a lot of reactions you can get. And once you see it, you cannot see it. But here's the part that actually kept me stuck the longest. I discovered that it isn't about people at all. Stay with me because this one is super interesting but a little harder to see. At some point, the people around you don't have to say it anymore. Because you know them well enough that you think you already know what they are gonna say. Maybe you think about quitting your job. And before you told anyone, you can already hear it. But you have such a good job. Maybe you think about moving somewhere else. And you know already exactly which friend is going to tell you that it's risky. Or you think about something completely different with your life. And you can already imagine the look of someone's face. And here's where it gets interesting. None of those conversations actually happened yet. You're having them just by yourself. You're imagining their reaction, answering it in your head, and sometimes chasing your decision because of it. So eventually, you're not only influenced by the people around you, you're influenced by a version of them that you have created in your own head. And if you recognize this, you're not the only one. There's actually a term for something similar in psychology. Anticipated social evaluation. It means that we predict how other people might judge or respond to us, and that prediction alone can influence what we do. Which is kind of crazy to me when you think about it. Someone doesn't actually have to tell you not to do something. Sometimes you imagine what they might say, and that's already enough to stop yourself. And I did that for years. I would think about something I wanted to do. Imagine how people would react. And then I decide myself that it was something not realistic before I said it out loud. For example, I wanted to create YouTube videos like I do now. And for years I stopped myself because I was afraid for all the reaction people might have. Well, I didn't even start it yet. Or I didn't even tell anyone that I wanted to start this YouTube channel. And this is also where I think you have to take responsibility for your own life. Because at some point, you can't keep saying, my environment is keeping me stuck. Of course, maybe it influenced you. Probably it shaped what you believe is normal, acceptable, realistic, or possible. But the voices inside of your head are yours. And you're the one who have to decide which one you're going to keep listening to. That's also why I think meeting new people can change you so much. Not because you have to replace your old friends, and not because the people around you are wrong, but because sometimes you need new voices. You need to meet someone who hears your crazy ideas and say, why not? Or maybe someone who was already doing the thing that you thought was impossible to do. Or maybe someone whose idea of a life is totally different than yours. Because suddenly there will appear another voice inside of your head. Another perspective, another possibility. And I think that's the real possibility we have. Not to blame the people around us for the voices that we picked up from them, but to become aware of those voices, questioning them, and choose which one still deserves to stay in our lives. Because most of the arguments we lose are the ones we have alone. So one more important thing. I don't think you fix this by cutting people out of your life. I want to be really clear about that. I still have my best friends since I was 4 and friends that I've known for like 10, 20 years. And I still love to go back to the Netherlands to see my dad and sister. I don't want to lose that because I feel like the old version of me isn't something that I need to get rid of. She is still a part of who I am. I think what changed is that I stopped letting that to be the only version of myself. Because old environments can remind you of who you were and new environments can show you who you could be. And I think that's one of the biggest things that traveling has given to me. Not just places, but people. Different ways of living, different definitions of success, and different ideas of what is normal. Every new environment showed me something different. And somehow, of course, I became different too. Not because I was pretending to be someone else. Actually, it feels like the opposite. I kept discovering parts of myself that never really had a reason to come out before. People always talk about finding yourself, like there's a final version of you somewhere, waiting to be found. And I don't think I believe that anymore. I think we're constantly rediscovering ourselves. And maybe that's what growth all is about. Because if I keep choosing environments that only reflect what I've always been, how am I supposed to discover who else I can become? What my full potential is? And I'm not saying that you have to move across the world to do so. You don't. Well, it's fun and it's a better way. But a new mirror can also be a new friend, a new conversation, a new community, or just someone who made a choice that you didn't know you were allowed to make. Sometimes you just need to see a different version of life up close before your brain starts to believe that it might be possible for you too. So at some point you need a different mirror. Not instead the people you love, just alongside of them. Because it's harder to imagine who else you can be when you're only surrounded by the people who remind you of who you've always been. I'll be honest why this matters so much to me. You can see all of this clearly and still not move, because seeing the mirror doesn't replace it. If everyone around you believes the safe path is the only real one, that belief is still the water you're swimming in, even if you have noticed the water. And that's a big part of why I built the one-way community. It's for women who feel like there is more than what they want from life, but don't want to figure it out all alone. It's a place to meet people with different dreams, different perspectives, and different ideas of what life can look like. You don't need to have it all figured out. You don't even know exactly what you want yet. You just need to be open to discover it. So if you feel like you just need some different mirrors in your life, join us. The link is in the description. If you haven't seen any of these other videos of this series about autopilot, the link to the videos are in the description too. I hope to see you there.